So today in class, we started our unit on personality, and we learned that there are four main theories of personality, but we're going to start with Freud's psychoanalytic theory. And the word psychoanalysis comes from this process that Freud came up with how we get into the unconscious. We learned about the iceberg metaphor and how Freud thought the majority of who we are, the majority of what makes up our personality, comes from our unconscious wishes and desires. And those two primal drives tend to be sexual and aggressive. And today in class, we talked about some ways that psychoanalysis suggests that we get into the unconscious to really determine what we truly want. And those involve hypnosis, free association, that's when I said the word and you said the first thing that came to mind, and also dream interpretation. So getting past just the manifest content that people have and really diving into the latent or the hidden content that was a part of someone's dream. What we didn't get to today was something called a Freudian slip. And a Freudian slip is something else that Freud said would give us a clue into the unconscious. And a Freudian slip is just essentially when you're saying something and something comes out incorrectly, but that incorrect part of your saying or the words that you say reveal something deeper about the unconscious. And again, they tend to be sexual or aggressive in nature. So for example, if you look at the example I have on the bottom here from Senator Ted Kennedy, this was during a speech he made. He said, "Our national interest ought to be to encourage," and his strong hands cupped the air, and he said, "the breast," and then he started up again. He meant the best and the brightest. So he's talking about students. He wants the best and the brightest students, but it came out saying the breast and the brightest. And so Freud would say that he had a Freudian slip of the unconscious coming out thinking about breasts. Freud might also say that calling your girlfriend or your boyfriend by your ex's name is a slip of the unconscious. Maybe you're missing them or you're unhappy in your current relationship. So he would say that that's not just a silly accident. Now, if you ask a cognitive psychologist today, a cognitive psychologist is just going to say, look, we make mistakes in our words all day long, and it's not because of any unconscious wishes that are coming out. It's just because our brain gets confused. Our schemas might interact with each other, or we might be primed to say one thing instead of the other. And so there's a big divide between the psychoanalytic perspective and the cognitive perspective over why we have these things. So I want to show you some examples of Freudian slips.
Toby, can I really tell you anything?
Of course.
Well, the other night, I was sitting at the table eating my penis. I mean peas. That was weird. Wow, that's weird. I think it all stems from the fact that I was probed by an alien life form.
And America needs a military where our best and brightest are proud to serve.
And I'm proud to have been his partner, and we've had trials. We've made some mistakes. We've had some setbacks.
But folks from that street in New York, the Bronx section, sound more likely to give her a curb job than a blow job or block party. The New York Post, sorry about that slip up there. I have no idea how that happened.
We're going to interview Eric Weihenmayer, who climbed the highest mountain in the world, Mount Everest. But he's gay. He's blind. So we'll hear about that coming up.
New York Mets, they wasted Alex Ochoa's first big league homer and suffered their third straight loss 6-4 to Philly last night. Pete Harnish on the mound for the Mets tonight.
So now that we know the dominance of the unconscious in our personalities, according to Freud, we're going to look at how he structured personality. So he said all of our personalities have three parts. We have an id, we have a superego, and then we also have an ego, which tries to balance those things out. And he said that our personality arises from the conflict between the id and the superego. The ego's job is to mediate the conflict between the id and the superego. But this is why our personalities are all different, because each of us mediates that conflict and solves that conflict in a different way. So we're going to go through each of these, the id, the superego, and the ego, in the following slides. And I think it's helpful to bring back this iceberg metaphor. He would say that the ego is what is our conscious, our reality principle. The superego would be that preconscious level, and then the id is demonstrated by those deep unconscious desires that we have. So the first component of Freud's personality structure is called the id, and it comes from a word meaning it. So he says when we're first born, we're just a creature, like we're just an it, and our desires are all very primal, and they're all about survival and getting what feels good and what's necessary to live. And so this is why he would say that our two primal desires are sex and aggression. And so the id is represented by the deepest part of our unconscious. I also like to use the metaphor of, if you think about like a person that has a devil on their shoulder and an angel on the other shoulder, and they're like constantly giving feedback to them on like, no, you should do this, and no, you should do this. The id would be represented kind of by the devil on your shoulder. So what's best for you, what feels the best, and this is the farthest part away from reality. This would be what he would say is in the deepest, darkest parts of our unconscious. We're going to go all the way to the opposite spectrum now, to the superego. The superego is actually the last part of personality to develop because it involves your internalized morals and ideals. So you need to be older to be able to figure out, well, what are the morals of society? What are the laws of society? And so this is what we develop last. But I talk about it second because it's in direct contrast to what the id is. So the id are those deepest, darkest primal desires, and the superego tells you that a lot of those deepest, darkest desires are wrong, or they are against the law, or they are something that we should be ashamed of and embarrassed of. You know, maybe I have an aggressive id who wants to murder someone. Well, the superego is going to come in and say, we shouldn't do that. That's not nice to murder somebody, or that's against the law. We shouldn't do that. And so this is the part of our personality that produces guilt and is in direct conflict with that id. So if we're using that metaphor of the devil on one shoulder, the angel on the other shoulder, this would definitely be the angel on your shoulder. So the last part of your personality is called the ego, and this actually develops second, but I talk about it last because this is represented by that person that's got both extremes on their shoulders. So this is our conscious level. This is called our reality principle. So if the id is our pleasure principle and the superego is our moral principle, the ego would be our reality principle. What are we going to do? And again, the ego's job is to mediate the conflict between what the id wants and what the superego wants. This is what Freud would say is our personality. What everybody sees as our personality is our ego. And so the best way I know how to explain it would be in this situation here. Let's say you spot someone who's super attractive and your id is telling you like, man, I just want to take them and have my way with them. But your superego is saying, a lot of those things I want to do right now without the permission is against the law, or it's against society's values, or I'll be labeled as promiscuous. So your ego has to decide, okay, how am I going to mediate the conflict between what my id really wants and what my superego is cautioning me about? So your id might say, well, maybe I should go flirt with them and then ask them out on a date, or, you know, pursue it more slowly. Then hopefully, eventually, the id will be satisfied, and so will the superego. Okay, so just to recap, today we reviewed the power of the unconscious, according to Freud, and we reviewed the ways that we would get into the unconscious, which is called psychoanalysis. We looked at a new one called a Freudian slip. And then we looked at the way that Freud structures our personality with the id, the ego, and the superego. So tomorrow we'll practice how to use these three parts of our personality in class. I'll see you then.